Hi, this is Dan Harris, and welcome to the Ironbird Podcast. On today's podcast, we're going to go through some questions that we often get from customers and other people in the industry that we're going to address here to make it a little bit easier for our listeners to understand. We'll jump right in. One of the biggest questions that we get a lot of the times is, what are the different aircraft sizes? So I'll break down the aircraft sizes here. It's almost like 8 different types. And, there's some outliers that I won't include, but really it goes from turboprop, very light jet, medium jet, super medium, heavy, ultra long range, and then there's like regional airliners or VIP airliners. But starting from the top of that list, turboprops, really popular turboprops are King Air 350s and Pilatus PC-12s. Those are the two very popular turboprops. They sit normally 6 to 8 is where they really range. And they're perfect for distances, I would say, under 2 hours. Now, technically, these turboprops can fly more than 2 hours. But from a cost standpoint, they have a lower operating cost. They burn less fuel. But they are slower airplanes. So based on that speed, the longer distances over 2 hours, you start to lose that lower cost advantage as the speed gets a little bit, as the airplanes are slower on those longer distances, the flight time starts to add up. Even though you may be paying $1,000, $2,000 less an hour, when you have to pay an additional hour or more, then you start to lose that cost efficiency. So turboprops, King Air, Pilatus, keep them under 2 hours. Another big advantage is that you can bring a lot of luggage on turboprops, and they can get into very short runways. Typically, jet aircraft like to see above 5,000. Some airplanes like to see 6 or 6,500, but really 5,000 feet runway is the limit that you want to see most jets take off from. Turboprops can utilize under 5,000. So sometimes you can get closer to your destination. A lot of turboprops here in Los Angeles can use the Santa Monica airport, where most jets cannot. So turboprops are the start of that airplane size. The next size is a very light jet. These airplanes are jet aircraft. They're not propellers like the turboprops. Popular very light jets are Phenom 100, Cirrus Vision Jet, Citation Mustang, Honda Jet. Typically seat 4 passengers, so they're small. Cabin size is very small. Again, I would say they are probably a 2 to 2.5 distance, 2 to 2.5 hour airplanes. So when you're looking at like New York, Florida, it's really on the edge of these airplanes. I wouldn't suggest it. Under 2 hours is a great mission for these. 2 passengers in a very light jet will probably fine. 2 normal sized passengers. If you're a bigger person, very light jets are going to be a little tight for you. The next size up would be light jets. The most popular light jet in the market is Phenom 300s. There's also Hawker 400s, Citation CJ2, CJ3, other Citation models. But really, the most popular light jets are Phenom 300, Citation CJ3, and Hawker Beechcraft 400s. Those are the 3 most popular. They typically seat 7. Some seat 6, some seat 8, depending on if there's a bench that seats 2 versus a chair. They're good for, I would say, 3-hour flights. The Phenom 300 can do a little bit more than that, but really 3 hours is probably the most you want to sit in an airplane that size. And then from a cost standpoint, turboprops are lowest, VLJs, it's the next step up in cost. Great for under 6 passengers. You can put 6 passengers in a Phenom or a Citation CJ3, but I think once you get 6, 7, it gets a little tight. 4, 5 are really good for most light jets. As we're going up in size to the medium cabin, Lear 60s is really the next step up in the medium cabin. So with medium cabin airplanes, it's Lear 60, Hawker 800, Citation XLS. Anything else in that medium cabin? It's really Citation XLS, Hawker 800, Lear 60 are the really popular. And each of these aircraft, like the Lear 60s, the Hawker 800, they have versions. So it's the Lear 60, the Lear 60 XR. You've got the Hawker 800 XP, the Hawker 900, Hawker 850 XPs. There's different models within each of these aircraft categories and manufacturers. But popular Hawker 800, Hawker 900, same tube, just some different avionics, different parts within the airplane that they use to upgrade it. Sometimes they'll upgrade the engine, sometimes they'll upgrade the avionics. So it's a little bit different for each aircraft. The medium-sized cabin it's not a true coast-to-coast airplane. So really, I would say 4 hours or less is probably a true cutoff when you're looking at the Hawker 800, the Lear 60s, the Hawker 900s. Some can make coast-to-coast on the short distance, but when you're coming the opposite way, when you're coming east to west versus west to east, it's quite often they're going to need to stop going coast to coast. So on your medium jets, you're really 4 hours or less is your real medium jet size. The next step up from that is the true coast to coast airplanes. It's the super medium cabin. The super medium cabin, the popular airplanes are Citation 10, Challenger 300, Gulfstream G200. Again, all of these have newer models. So the Citation 10, the Citation 10 Plus, the Challenger 300 has a few newer models. Challenger 350, the Challenger 3500. The Gulfstream G200 also has the Gulfstream G280. So all these airplanes have newer models. And there's a few other airplanes in each of these categories that you may see. You may see a Falcon 50, Hawker 1000. There's a couple other airplanes you'll see, but I'm going to touch on just really the popular ones. So Challenger 300, Gulfstream G200, really coast-to-coast range. So you can fly New York to California, coast-to-coast without any issues with stopping. They typically seat 8 or 9 passengers. It's the typical configuration. Sometimes people don't love filling these airplanes full, but you really could put 8 people on this airplane and be comfortable. They can handle most of the luggage, and they can do really missions 5 to 6 hours. The next step up from the super medium is the large or heavy jet category. Popular airplanes in this category, the Gulfstream 4, Gulfstream 450, Falcon 2000s, Challenger 605, 604s, Legacy 600, Falcon 900. Again, same thing with all these airplanes before. There's newer versions of these airplanes, so model numbers kind of range. Typical size is 12 to 13 seats. They range in capacity to about 6 to 7 hours. Most of these airplanes can fly. When you start getting to bigger airplanes too, luggage and passenger capacity, luggage and passenger weights, when you're starting to go these longer distances, anytime you're going to stretch an airplane to its maximum flight time, that's really when, your passenger weights, your luggage weights, the runway distance, how much you can tank or fuel really come into play. So large jets, think Gulfstreams, Legacies, Falcons, 6 to 8 hours of flying, 12 to 13. Then you get to your next step up. It's your ultra long range airplanes. Think Gulfstream 550, Gulfstream 5, Global 6000, Global Express, and then there are some newer versions, G600s, Global 7500 as well. They all fall in the ultra long range. These are 12-hour plus aircraft. So if you were flying Los Angeles to London, or these ultra long distances that you need an airplane with a lot more capacity, fuel capacity, these airplanes will fill that void. And each of these airplanes, from a cost standpoint, kind of tick up from hourly rates. So that's the breakdown of each airplane size. There are some outliers. You can fly in a Boeing business jet, which is quite often a Boeing 737 that they've configured. If you want to know more of that, you can watch our podcast with Charlie Fulcrod and Avjet. There's also some other regional airliners that they have configured for larger ones. This episode is brought to you by Video Valet. If you care about having the best in-flight experience on your private flights, Video Valet offers up to 1.2 million movies, shows, magazines, and newspapers, all available on board without the need of expensive Wi-Fi or hardware. Eric and his team at Video Valet deliver fully customized iPads to ensure that your preferences are met on every single flight. Whether providing my kids with their favorite shows or allowing me and my wife to catch up on breaking news, I personally could never travel without it again. Video Valet is offering a special promotion to Ironbird Podcast listeners. Mention Ironbird, and Video Valet will add one free fully personalized iPad at no additional cost. Now to the Ironbird Podcast. So I want to touch on the charter booking process. When clients come to us and say, well, what does it take to book an airplane? What's that process look like? Can you break down that process for us? And I will. Here it goes. So there are apps that will allow you to one-click book, theoretically, like Wheels Up. The biggest downsides of the one-click booking apps is there's a lot of nuances when it comes to luxury travel. And some of the things may be selecting the right aircraft for your mission based on your passenger count, your luggage amounts, the event you're going to. There's a lot that's lost in just one click. You also need to know if you're flying into destinations like Aspen, or you're flying for an event like the Super Bowl, when to arrive, when to leave, what are my restrictions. Quite a lot gets lost in just seeing an airplane and a price. So really what the process should be is you talk to an advisor. The advisor will ask you a few questions to make sure that they have the right information from you. Why are you traveling? How many passengers? Do you have an event you're going to? They really should extract all that important data. What are your personal preferences? Do you feel claustrophobic in certain airplane sizes? How much luggage will you be taking? Will you be okay if you fully fill this airplane, or do you want some space? Are you okay serving and eating your own food, or do you need a cabin attendant? And then they'll take all that information. They'll provide you back with, here are the top 3 to 5 airplanes in the market for your specific airplane that fit really what you're looking for. You'll select that airplane. You'll go to contract at that airplane. What happens there is you'll contract with that specific airplane. Once you sign, there's a operational approval process that will just double check all the details. Yes, this airplane could do it on this time. Yes, their crew that fits. Yes, there's no issues with this airport. Once that operational checks are done, your flight is booked. After that is payment. Most aviation companies require wire payment. You can do credit card payment. Quite often you're going to pay a credit card fee, normally around 4%. But if you wire, you won't have that issue. And then it's the itinerary process. So gathering a lot of that data, passenger full name, birth dates, any catering, any ground transportation. They'll update a trip itinerary for you and then email or text that trip itinerary for you. It's the consumer's goal to double check to make sure that trip itinerary looks correct. All the dates, all the times, all the people, all the names, all the birth dates. Just take a really good look. Do I have everything that's right? Because often what a lot of times people are just emailing, they're reading, and then they're copy and pasting. So things can get messed up surprisingly easily. So just make sure that you've got all that data looks correct. You don't show up to the airplane, and when the pilot looks at the manifest, he looks at your ID. If it's wrong, he'll still, it won't stop you from coming on the airplane. But what they'll have to do is update the manifest, rerun your name through the TSA no-fly list, print out a manifest, get approvals again. It'll delay you. So just to combat delays, that's what I would suggest. And the same thing with booking. I think the apps are getting there. I don't think they're there yet with all the nuanced things that you need. So I still think having an aviation advisor is probably your best bet. I get asked a lot about safety. Is this airplane safe? Is this operator safe? Is this a safe trip? Is this a safe airplane? I would say probably when you're talking about safety, I think we're talking in like fractions. I would say 95% of airplanes are safe. It just comes down to that last 5%. How much risk are you willing to take? For me and the majority of my clients, they want to reduce that risk as close to 0% as possible. And to do that, there are a few things that you can do. The first thing, the easiest thing that most people do, and I think it's a good way to start, but I don't think it's the end all be all, is safety ratings. There's Argus and Wyvern. They're the two main safety, independent safety auditors. They are for-profit companies. So it's not like these are non-profit, hey, let's make sure everyone's safe. They're for-profit companies. So operators pay them to get the safety rating. So it's not the end all be all, but it's a good start. However, with Argus, you've seen Argus Platinum, Argus Gold are the two main ratings. Sometimes you see smaller operators that just don't want to pay Argus. They know they're safe. They've got the same pilots that have been flying this airplane. They've got 4 airplanes in their fleet. They manage them maybe even better than Argus Platinum. So if someone said, hey, this one's Argus Gold and this one's Platinum, is the Platinum safer? Not necessarily. You really want to start to dig down, either yourself or your aviation advisor. Start to look at, okay, what's the record of that aircraft operator? Dig into this airplane. Does this airplane ever had any damage, any issues with the airplane? Then dig into the pilots. All right, let's run a report on these pilots. How much total time do these pilots have? How much do they have in this specific airplane? How much do they have in the type? How much do they have as a captain? And then when you're going into airports that are a little trickier, think Aspen. How many times has this airplane and this crew flown into Aspen in the last year or 2 years? I think that's a really good question that not a lot of people ask. And one more thing that I don't think a lot of people ask is insurance amounts. So if you look at an airplane and it has $5, $10, $15 million of insurance, that's the type of thing that I see operators try and save money on. So and it's not that big of a savings either. So if an operator is trying to save money on insurance, that makes me think, what else are they trying to save on? Are they trying to save on pilots? Are they trying to save on maintenance? So that's one of the things that when I look at different ways to analyze safety, small things like insurance are some of those pointers that I really like to dig in and look into. Cost breakdown. What is it? What are the actual costs for these airplanes to charter, and why does it cost me this amount? So when I get asked, well, what's in this cost of the airplane? To break down the actual operating costs. If you were an airplane owner, here is your cost to own and fly a private jet. You are paying for the fuel. That's a pretty simple, if you're taking 5,000 gallons or 1,000 gallons, whatever you're paying for direct fuel cost. You are paying your pilot salaries. So quite often you've got 2 pilot salaries. Sometimes you have more, but you're paying 2 pilots their full salaries. And pilots these days are doing really well. They're making $200,000-$300,000. So you amortize that into, if an airplane flies 500 hours, you've got $500,000 of pilot salaries. You amortize that into a per hour cost. You've got your maintenance cost. So maintenance cost is a little bit more difficult, but you can pretty much take an average cost of what your maintenance will be and then try and amortize that into per hour. You've got an estimated cost of what you think it'll be. You can really only look backwards after your aircraft has flown and what you've paid in maintenance. But there's a maintenance cost. Most companies make it easier from a maintenance standpoint. They purchase insurance programs. So they purchase a flat monthly rate based on, not a flat monthly rate. They purchase a per hour cost. And every hour that airplane flies, they pay to an engine insurance program. Sometimes they pay for avionics. Sometimes they pay for a lot more. They call it tip to tail maintenance program. And that amortizes into your maintenance program. And then you have some of your fixed costs, like a hangar cost, if you bring your airplane back to a hangar, or there's a cost to park it on the ramp. And then a management fee quite often that you pay for the management company that is going to manage that aircraft for you. There's some small other ancillary costs, like services, like you have to pay for your maps, you have to pay for some of your systems, your Wi-Fi. But those are all the things that come into play to an hourly rate. Then when you're taking a trip, say you're going from Los Angeles to Napa, you are paying, and then you're staying for a week. Quite often, you're not paying just to go Los Angeles, Napa, and then that airplane's going to sit for a week. That airplane's not. You're paying for that airplane to go to Napa and then quite often back down to Los Angeles. So you're paying for 2 hours for that 1 hour flight. Now, what jet cards and fractionals do really well is they say, all right, if this airplane costs $5,000 an hour, and I tell a client, oh yeah, it's $5,000 an hour, and they fly to Napa, but then it costs me 10 because I have to fly to Napa and back. What they'll do is they'll just average out that cost and say, oh, it costs $9,000 an hour to fly one way. So they try and simplify that. They bundle in that round trip cost and maybe discount it a little bit and charge you one way. So that's a really interesting way that jet cards and some fractions do that. One of the big reasons for flying private is time savings. Some people really think, oh, it's the luxury and that's really what people are doing. It's not. I would say the majority is it comes down to time. And if you were to compare it, we'll take a simple route. We'll do a Los Angeles to Napa flight. So if you were to fly Los Angeles to Napa commercially, you are going to say you've got a noon flight. You're going to get to the airport, let's say an hour and a half before. So you're getting to the airport at 10:30. Let's say it takes 30 minutes to get to the airport. Where I live, it does. Maybe it takes you longer. Maybe if you were in Beverly Hills, it might take you an hour in traffic. So that at 10:30 now, you're leaving your house at 9:30. So you leave your house at 9:30. You get to the airport at 10:30. You're there an hour. You got to walk through TSA. You take off, at noon. You arrive in San Francisco or Oakland at 1. Takes you, call it 30 minutes to get off the land, to taxi, to get the ramp, everything. We'll say that's 30 minutes from there. So now it's 1:30. It takes you another 30 minutes just to get off the airplane. Now you're at 2 o'clock. Now you have to wait for your bags. Call that another 30 minutes. That's 2:30. Now you have to go get your rental car. You're at 3. Now you have to drive to Napa. You're at 4. So you started your day at 9:30. You're now in Napa at 4. Let's take the same flight with private. You start your day at 9:30. You drive to the Van Nuys Airport. You're there at 10. You depart at 10:15. You get to Napa at 11:15. You're out of your car by 11. So you have arrived at your destination before your commercial flight has even taken off. That time distance, it turns a 6-7 hour day into a 3-4 hour day. That's really the difference with private and commercial. That time savings. It's hours and hours. And someone that travels, especially for work, a decent amount, the amount of that time saving every single trip really equates to dollars and efficiency. So that's really the goal of private aviation, is creating those efficiencies, creating more time with your family, more time at work, and creating more value. That's the goal of private aviation. I talk to a lot of wealth managers that they normally just refer clients to FlexJet and NetJets. And I understand why. One, they do a great job, but it's the safest thing to refer clients to. They're never going to get fired by referring clients to NetJets or FlexJet. But quite often, that's not going to be the best fit for clients. I think NetJets and FlexJet do a great job, and they're a great fit for a lot of people, but they're not for everybody. And here's some of the reasons why. Large upfront capital costs quite often. So if you're going to buy a fraction or a jet card, you are making a large upfront purchase that I know a lot of my clients would rather take that money and invest and get a better rate of return. Even if the cost of flying privately compared to NetJets versus on-demand charter, where you don't have to make it upfront, even if NetJets was lower, which it's not, it's higher, quite often clients can take that money and do a better job with it than putting down large chunks of money. Also, clients don't want to get locked into a long-term contract. 3 to 5 years, a lot of clients aren't exactly sure if they're going to fly the same 100 hours they are this year with their current business that they are in 3 to 5 years. So people like to stay away from those long-term contracts. What I suggest people do that are looking for a contract is buy the least amount possible. I would say buy 50 hours max and then offset the rest with charter. That's a strategy that I employ with a lot of our clients that works really well. If for some reason their travel patterns work really well for NetJets, NetJets will always sell you more hours. They're never going to say, no, we won't sell you more hours. So that's a strategy I always suggest. Buy low, 50 hours, and then balance the rest with an on-demand charter. That way you can put the least amount of cash out of your pocket and then utilize that for your investments. I get asked a lot of times why I started Ironbird Partners. And, I started in the industry almost 20 years ago, and I've been through different parts of the industry. I started as a charter broker with the guys that are now at Magellan Jets. I went to work for an airplane operator, TWC Aviation, ended up being purchased. And when they were being sold, I left and worked for an aviation consulting firm, Aviation Portfolio, that really focused on helping people buy and manage their fractional aircraft. And then I went back to work for Clay Lacy Aviation because I enjoyed the charter side of it. It's where I had a ton of knowledge and where I provide a lot of value. And while at Clay Lacy, I was trying to find the best airplane for the client every time, whether it was within the Clay Lacy fleet or not with another provider. And Clay Lacy and any airplane operator, they really want you to move airplanes in their fleet. They have airplane owners. That's their main client. So it's their goal to get as many hours on their airplanes as possible. I was more focused on finding the best airplane for the client every time. And that kind of clashed a little bit as it should with any airplane operator. So I made the decision to go with a business partner of mine that had left Clay Lacy a little earlier than I did, that it was time for us to just start a company that we could clearly focus only on the client. We didn't have airplane owners or large stockholders or anything other than the client. That was our only focus. Can we build a company that's clearly focused on one thing? Getting the best airplane at the best price for the client every single time. And that's why we really started Ironbird Partners, and that's why clients really enjoy working with us, because they know their best interest is always in mind every time they call us. Every time we pick up the phone, our goal is, okay, how can we make this the best possible flight every single time? And it really has worked really well for us. Our clients really enjoy that approach, and it's something that we really enjoy scaling. I think the next step for Ironbird is really folding in more tech. We've become AI obsessed. And what I'm really hoping that AI can do for us is, one, get rid of any small mistakes. You'd be surprised about how a lot of aviation is done just like over emails. So it's information emailed back and forth. Typos happen, things are missed. So really, I want AI to first come in and double check everything. They said this, did they do that? Come in, double check everything. We're probably too far away from really systems merging with each other, with scheduling systems of all these different airplane operators merging. So I think the AI is going to help really bring those things together. One thing I also really want AI to do, and when I'm really trying to figure out how to develop, is that airplane schedules are constantly changing. An airplane owner books his airplane, he's flying, it's not available. We get a request, that airplane that the owner has is not available. We book something else. But that airplane owner's schedule changes. He cancels that flight. What I really want AI to do is to take a look at the flight we have booked, take a look at that airplane that just opened up. Oh, this is a better airplane at a better price. Great. I'm going to cancel this and then move this flight into this booking. That will theoretically cause a chain reaction, because now when my airplane cancels and open up, we move another flight into that airplane, and that kind of follows along. The high quality, best price airplanes will always get the best flights, and then clients will always be happy. So that's really the next level for us, for Ironbird, is really implementing more of that AI systems within our operation and then within the booking process as well. I've been asked why we've started the Ironbird Private Jet podcast, and it's a few reasons. One, I just don't think there's a much content out there about all the different phases of aviation. There's so many small intricacies in accounting, in aviation law, in maintenance, with in-cabin experience, different operators. I mean, there's so many different airplane operators out there that I'd love to highlight. Different aircraft salespeople that can help you. It's hard to find who the good people in the industry are. You can't, when you Google something, it's whoever is paying the most for a pay-per-click. So I wanted to try and highlight some of the people that I think, since I've been doing it for 20 years, who are the best of the best, and who people should be working with, and highlight some of the stories and the things behind the curtains in private aviation that not a lot of people know about. Especially and some of the stories I've heard have been crazy. And I've got a ton of crazy stories, and we're just talking about this on LinkedIn about some of the craziest stories. And there's a lot of stories I can't share. Someone told me about, they got the FBI came knocking at their door because they sent a hit squad to Haiti. There's a lot of like people getting caught at customs with things they shouldn't have. I remember one of my favorite stories is I had a last minute booking for a lead singer of a rock and roll band who's now no longer with us. I think he drank himself to death. And it was an LA Phoenix. We had a Citation Mustang that we booked. And so we booked the airplane, it's an ASAP. We call the pilots, hey, get to the airport. Let's go. During that process, during the booking process, there's an operational approval process. So I book it. I'm in sales, right? I'm more focused on the flight and getting it booked and making sure pricing works and everything works. Operationally, as they should, they're working through all the check marks, making sure we can operate this flight legally. And you'd be surprised how many times things get missed with the FAA rules. Luckily, I've always worked for really tight operational companies, and that's the companies I like working with. So as they're going through their checks, we realize, the system didn't flag this flight because when we wanted to book it, it was daytime. But by the time pilots got to the airport, it was sundown, and it was going to be nighttime. So there are different regulations for pilots that fly during the day and how many that they have to fly at night. Quite often you need so many night landings within a time period. And quite often pilots get those just during normal flying, but this one pilot didn't have enough night landings. So pilots are there, they fuel the airplane, client pulls up, says, great, airplane's here, can I get on? I go, wait, you can't get on yet. The plane needs to take 3 takeoff and landings at night before this pilot is legally allowed to fly on this airplane. And he's like, what the F? What are you talking about? I'm like, just wait. So he had catering, and the catering was just like Johnny Walker. It was basically all he ordered for catering. So he's sitting in the airplane terminal, just drinking this bottle of Johnny Walker. And I'm just watching this bottle go down. I see the airplane take off. They land one more time. They taxi out. I see it take off. They land one more time. And I'm just like, I don't know. This guy's going to drink this whole bottle before this airplane does. Now, finally, they have the third landing. They get in. The guy hadn't finished it. He brings it on board. He's intoxicated. They get him on board. They take off. They get him to Phoenix. He makes the show. I don't know how he performed based on the amount he drank, but he made the show. Everything worked out well. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories like these. So, and all these different things that I think people will want to learn and want to know more about, the really behind the scenes of what happens in the private aviation space. And that's really why I wanted to start the podcast. And I've gotten some really great feedback from everyone. I really appreciate it. And if you have questions about anything, how private aviation works, different airplanes, pilots, really, I think what I'm missing, what I haven't had on, is one, more diverse voices, which I want to bring on more. I want to bring on a few pilots because I think there's some really good pilot stories of the pilot perspective. Probably more of what the dispatchers look like, more of a dispatcher standpoint. Um, and then just, maybe around the financial business. I want to start breaking down, okay, what does it cost to operate these airplanes? Because it's really, you'd be surprised, I think, both ways of like what it costs and what it doesn't cost to operate these airplanes. So I'm hoping that with this podcast, we get more exposure to the good players in the industry because I think there's more good players than bad. I think the bad players get some more of that shine. And really just make it interesting, make private aviation interesting. I think it's been vilified a little too much that it's just, we're just burning jet fuel and we're bad for the environment. We're not doing anything to help. I think when people say that, I look at like what just happened with these last hurricanes here in Florida and North Carolina. I mean, the way the private aviation community steps up and brings in goods, brings like a lot of these goods and services can't get to these, like commercial airliners can't fly into a place that just had a hurricane tear through it. These are small King Airs, light jets, like these are private aviation. Not only operators, but the owners of these airplanes take their time and money to really help these communities after these disasters. And it happens all the time. It's not just disasters. It's bringing people where they need to go. There's Angel Flight, which is bringing people who can't fly commercially that need life-saving, cancer treatments or medical treatments. There's so much incredible good stuff that the private aviation space does that I think most people are just highlighted on the, F the rich people. And it's like, there's so many jobs. It's like just the job creation of building airplanes, working at airports, pilots. I mean, it's a great industry. Do we burn fossil fuels? Yes, we do. But so do a lot of other industries out there. I want to look more at the positives of it. And I also think even from that side, the environmental side, I think the industry is really making good strides. They're really pushing forward new technology, battery technology, hydrogen technology, like green fuel technology. They are pushing forward. And I think sooner than later, it's going to be a very green type of, it maybe not in the next 10 years, but in the next 50, it will be. It'll be a very green technology of air travel. So I think when that comes, there'll really be nothing bad to say about it. I think I hit most everything. Yeah. What else? Let's see what Austin hit me on. It's a couple things. Yeah, I posted it on LinkedIn. Let me go through and I'm going to read a couple of the LinkedIn stories that I got.
Cool. Sweet. Yeah.
So I posted on LinkedIn about like, I want to hear some of the good stories. I had a couple that I started out. So the Citation Mustang flight, I had a good one that I've got a great friend that runs a fantastic travel agency, and we booked a flight. We had a client that was trying to get to St. Martin. Client was trying to get to St. Bart's. His commercial flight was delayed, so he missed his transfer flight. So we had to book him a flight from New York down to St. Martin, and then transfer from St. Martin to St. Bart's. St. Bart's a very short runway. You can't get in with most airplanes. Can't bring a G5 in there. So you book a small like turboprop Caravan. So he lands he takes off from New York late because there's weather. So you have a tight window. You need to, when you're in St. Bart's, you have a slot, you have a window, you got to get in there. He leaves New York, lands in St. Martin. We transfer all of his bags from his Gulfstream to this little Caravan. And we're rushing, trying to get everyone in, trying to get all the bags in. As we're rushing, the co-pilot goes off to run to go to the bathroom. We get everybody in, the door's shut. The pilots say, we need to leave right now or we're going to miss our time slot. St. Bart's won't let us in. Co-pilot was still like in the bathroom. He goes, too late. Co-pilot's not going to make it. Takes off. Leaves the co-pilot in the bathroom. Co-pilot walks out like we didn't know where the airplane went. The airplane was taken off on the way. Now, luckily, it was a single pilot airplane, so it didn't matter. They could operate safely. But guy takes off with just one pilot. The time I was flying a Hawker 1000 and the passengers showed up with a full-size refrigerator to take it to their second home in Mexico. If you don't know the Hawker, there's no way you can get a large refrigerator in the airplane. There was a Justin Bieber story that he flew to Munich and he had just been gifted a pet monkey. He flew to Munich and didn't have any of the paperwork for the pet monkey. And they basically took the monkey and quarantined it. And then I think he left without the monkey. Mexican customs steals candy laced with marijuana. Crew forgets to clear customs. Some interesting ones where maintenance guys get called out to look at an airplane and everything has rust and corrosion. And the guy's like, oh, I can't, you need to put this in maintenance. The guy's like, oh, never mind. I'll find somebody else to fly the airplane. The time the FAA called me late at night, the airplane buyer had hopped the fence to try and get his airplane ready to buy, but he hadn't even closed on it yet. Any other good ones? There's a lot of ones about sexual intercourse on airplanes. I guess that's another question. It's like, can you have sex on a private jet? I mean, you could. Different airplanes are different sizes. I think, I don't know how, common courtesy, it's probably not that great. They do, on some Gulfstreams, I'll say this. The cleaning's probably not great. On some Gulfstreams, in large airplanes, they can set it up with, in the back of the cabin, they can set up a bed and they can put a door. So there's a door, the back of the cabin, a bed, and a bathroom. Like at that point, you close the door. You don't see the crew or the flight attendant. I feel like that's fair game. The cleaning, I would say that's when like you look at tipping the crew a little bit more, right? But a lot of airplanes don't have like a door that can shut off. So you quite often, or it's like a small door from you and the pilot. So like I've heard a lot of pilots like that have seen, countless people having sex. I had an A-list musician where she's also an actress. She was engaged at that time. I had a flight attendant walk in on her and somebody else that wasn't her fiance at the time in the bathroom. I've also had a lot of people smoke on airplanes when you can't, both like tobacco and marijuana. So smoking on airplanes, especially marijuana, the biggest concern, the legality of it, of like crossing state lines, you're going, you're taking a substance that is often like illegal from one state to the other. That's one. But another part that you really need to be careful about is quite often air flows from the back to the front of an airplane. So if you're smoking marijuana and that airflow goes to the front, you don't want your pilots getting high, because like pilots have to fly the fucking airplane. It's like, that's the last thing you want, is your pilots getting stoned, and not like, you want your pilots as sharp as possible. So that's why you don't drink. That's why they don't allow them. That's why they drug test pilots. It also is very dangerous for pilots, because then like if they get drug tested and fail, they'll lose their license. So quite often when people are smoking, that's why crew members are very, very strict about it. One, they want all their senses as sharp as possible. And two, if they inhale your secondhand smoke and then fail a drug test, they lose their job, their license, their livelihood is gone. So that's the big thing about smoking marijuana on airplanes. I would say eat an edible. If you really need it, just eat an edible. Don't light up a joint on an airplane. That would be my suggestion if you really can't wait. Same thing. A lot of people don't like smoking on airplanes. One, because it just stinks. It's hard to get it out. There's a lot of soft surfaces on airplanes, carpets, sidewalls. Some of the chairs are cloth. So getting it off from, especially if it's a charter. If you charter the airplane, you're smoking cigarettes or cigars, it's tough to clean that airplane for the next person that's going to get on that airplane. So that's why most providers really shy away from people smoking. Oh, you know what? There's been a couple companies that went bankrupt lately, and um, there's probably be one or two more as demand comes down. And I think that's the one thing that buyers have to be careful about. And that's a real advantage of on demand versus programs. I don't think FlexJet or NetJets are going to go bankrupt. But there's quite often a lot of new startups that are doing all these interesting things and fly for less money or buy this asset, buy this program. I've seen millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars get lit on fire for people that are saying, oh, let me give these guys 300, 400, $500,000. Their program is offering this. If it seems too good to be true, if it's that much less than everybody else, it probably is. These airplanes cost the same for everybody. So right now there's no real way for someone to operate this airplane at such a lower cost that they're like, oh, this is a way better deal than anybody else. If it's a much better deal, it's probably because they're losing money. And as long as you're okay potentially not lighting that money on fire, then go for it. Maybe you can run through your deposit before they go bankrupt, but quite often, if it's too good to be true, it usually is. Holiday trips is another thing I get asked about. Holiday and peak or event trips. So I think the perfect booking window for very popular dates like the Super Bowl or like holidays, it's really probably 2 months. If you can get 2 months in advance of when you're going to be traveling, the only downside to that is quite often on those dates, you locked into a little bit more restrictive cancellation terms. But when you're traveling for the holidays, Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, um, some of any of the time that school has holidays, President's Day, July 4th, 2 months. That would be my suggestion to you. At 2 months, you're going to lock in a good airplane at a decent rate. It is a little bit harder to change times, dates, things like that over the holidays. But as long as like you feel really good and you're locked in, you got to get 2 months out. And things like the Super Bowl, where they may not have enough, they run out of landing slots. So if you're not far enough in advance, you're gonna either not be able to take it or you're gonna have to like land an hour or more away. So 2 months is my suggestion when you're looking at holiday or busy times. Yeah, we've a lot of the time we've gotten calls where clients have either been sold a false bill of goods. Hey, these guys said they could do this and they're not, or I've even had people stranded in a lot of places. And we get the call, hey, can you help us out? Like we're here, we were told this, but this isn't happening. We've always been able to find an airplane. We can always get an airplane. We'd always been able to pull an airplane. The good thing is being in the industry for over 20 years, I've got a lot of favors that people owe me. And I like to give a lot of favors too. I like to be as reciprocal as I can. So we bailed a lot of people out of a lot of situations. We've helped people that have had people that were sick and couldn't travel. Those are really, we do a lot of those really at our cost. We don't, when someone's in a bad spot, it's not really an opportunity for us to make money. Those are the ones where you do those for basically our cost, but you feel really good. Those are some of my favorite trips I've ever done. The successful ones where everything was good and you made money, those are great. But I think the ones where you've gotten people that either out of a bad situation or they really needed to get to somewhere and you helped them out. They had a cancellation and you still got them there on time. They were able to do their thing is great. One thing I always have a hard time with, especially when we're looking at touring. when we do flights for people that are doing shows, especially multi-stop shows, I always have a hard time flying in the day of a show. I always like doing a show, then leaving that city and then going to the next city, overnighting there at the next city, and then having that show at the next city. Some people like to do a show, go out in that city and have fun, and then travel the next day to the show. Like if you had a show on a Friday in Cincinnati and then a Saturday in Minneapolis, some people will go Friday at Cincinnati, we'll go out, we'll then go to Minneapolis the next day. I see that as too risky. Like, do your show in Cincinnati, leave Cincinnati that night, get to Minneapolis, and then, get there late, get there at 1:00, whatever it is, get to bed, and then wake up the next day, do that show, and then do it all over again. When you are not flying until a few hours before the show, your recovery ability is really limited. You want to maximize that window to basically everything that goes wrong. You want as much time as possible to fix those things. And when you wait to the last minute to get into your city that you're performing on, you really shrink that window. So keep that window big. Depart as early as you can, right after that next show. Get out of that city. Cincinnati's not that cool anyways. Get to Minneapolis. And then now you have this big window. If for some reason you get to the airplane and you pop a tire or you have a windshield, you've got a window to fix it. That's would be my suggestion of any touring artists. That's how I would operate your tour from a flight operations standpoint.